Another way of thinking about what we're discussing here is that when people are communicating with other people, in person or via some kind of media, what is the basis of why they're communicating? What is the actual motive or agenda or ordinating basis of that communication? Because it is a shared thing. There's an interpersonal thing happening. Is the communication for the interpersonal benefit, for the benefit of those people and the larger wholes that they're part of in the ecology and whatever? Is it for some private benefit? Is the motive being shared? Is it not being shared? These are important inquiries, and humans are smart. And we have a world where there are ways where we can advantage ourselves at the expense of others. There are ways where the expense to other can be hidden so we have plausible deniability on it, or seems diffuse to a lot of people so it doesn't seem that bad, or seems rationalizable because if I don't, some other bad thing will happen. So there's a lot of reasons why someone can even feel moral and right by doing something to be self-serving that involves sharing something that is to some degree distorted, meaning not true or not the whole truth in a representative way or whatever. I don't think the history on this is clear. I think there's still a good bit of debate on theories of it. Gelman and Girard and various thinkers on the history of linguistics have different thoughts on the evolution of spoken language and then formalizations of spoken language. But I think it's pretty clear that language did not evolve just based on individual selection. It was that groups survived better based on their ability to share information and coordinate better, i.e. to share sense-making. I went and I saw where the predator was or where the berries were or where the water was, and I come back and share. So the ability for the people to share their sense-making and then to be able to coordinate that has a group intelligence that is better than just the individual intelligences, that their ability to communicate created groups that survive better so than those individuals that did effective communication within groups did. So it's a group selection phenomena more than an individual selection phenomena, which means that the evolution of language was actually for the survival of the group. This is something that Landry's done a lot of work on. And yet today we share communication very often in self-serving ways, not for the benefit of the group, but for the benefit of self, or self and some proxy, some fealty relationships like family or political side or company or nation or whatever it is. But that's still self and group I identify with in context of externalize harm to some other group that's also connected to our context. But even just in personal relationships, and if you just look on Facebook, the amount of sharing that is self-serving through language, when I think language actually evolved as a collective intelligence tool, is a real underlying fundamental problem. And I think then, to the degree we do it, it leads to everyone doing it, leads to a multipolar trap that leads to a broken epistemic commons and information ecology where almost nobody actually trusts anyone or thinks really well or communicates in earnest, effective shit that empowers each other. I would like, when I'm communicating, to share things that actually empower you to be more sovereign, not that try to capture your sovereignty so that you believe and do in service of what I want. Right? And I think the reason that we're sharing these videos is actually not trying to say, this is my worldview, believe it, but to say, this is the way that anyone selling a worldview, including where I'm selling worldviews in other places, can have distortion, intentionally or unintentionally. So how do you better equip yourself to notice that?
Including the worldviews that we're selling to ourselves?
Including the worldviews we're selling to ourselves, and yeah, like the distortion is to self most of the time. And that's actually why I said one of the things that good sense-making requires is a lot more courage, but also a lot more humility. Because one of the main problems is faulty overconfidence. And then there is a failure on the other side, which is to simply embrace not confidence, but give up on sense-making. I got no idea what the fuck's going on. I'm playing video games. Or I got no idea what's true, so I'm going to vote for a strongman leader that I think will at least protect me in war. Right? So we can see the number of Russian citizens that say that they think Putin is lying, even to them, in the news, but also still support him. Because they don't think that truth is a possibility, and that a good, strong politician facing huge opponents and enemies like the West has to lie, and they at least think that he's going to keep them safe and serve their interests better than some other people would. And so you can see there, when people's epistemic certainty is low and they don't know how to make good choices for themselves or what's true, they start defecting to wanting strongman leaders more. We see this in the US right now. You can also see that because strongman leaders know that, helping to decrease everyone's epistemic certainty is actually in their interest. And that will always lead in the direction of dictatorship towards despotism. And if we want anything like a more democratic or more republic process where more people are engaged in their own governance, they have to do the sense-making to be able to meaningfully engage with other people that they are going to be bound with. And if you don't want to, and you don't commit to do what it takes to be actively informed and civically engaged, then you consent to be ruled by those who seek to rule. If you are willing to just adopt belief systems based on who the dominant group think closest to you that seems to serve your interests is, then you are consenting to be ruled and to the descent towards that particular kind of dictatorship. And if you want something like a democratized process, democracy doesn't mean voting. It means a process by which more people are engaged in their own governance, of which voting is one tool. But the Founding Fathers said voting is the death of democracy. I forget, I think it was Jefferson said it, because the democracy really meant, can more of us engage in better conversations than the monarch says what happens, right? Or the whatever kind of rulership there is. And to the degree we have a town hall where we have an actual good, earnest dialectic conversation, we might not even need to vote, because we come up with something where we all agree that's a good idea. And the vote is, if we can't, to sublimate physical warfare with a voting warfare, right? But it's actually a warfare where some people are now actually unhappy with the way the whole thing is moving forward, but they at least think that still participating with that system is better than defecting on it and going into war, so they're willing to do it and try again in the next 4 years, right? Or whatever the next thing is. But if we want something other than despotism, the only way to check power... Actually, this is an important point that I would like to make in closing. Anyone who has asymmetric power, whether that's more money or political power or cultural influence or whatever, and usually those come together, right? More money also means that I can buy cultural influence through media and marketing and paying other people to say things that are aligned with what I want, and being able to pay lobbyists and campaign budgets to get political power. So we can just talk about power itself and all of those as expressions. Those who have more power within a power asymmetry both have the incentive and the capacity to maintain that power asymmetry and increase it. So they have the ability to make news that does the bidding of that has the populace believe things that continue to serve them having more power in that system. They can get representation, they can create technologies, they can corner markets, they can, whatever it is, corner scarce resources that allow them to continue doing that. They can suppress opponents.